Welcome in. Mark Bergin here, joined by WRAL plus executive producer Louis Fernandez. Louis, Labor Day weekend is upon us, which means college football season is here. We had the appetizer with week 0. We go full on starting tonight. We're recording this on Wednesday. This will be out Thursday morning. Starting tonight, we've got college football back on Thursday night.
It's beautiful. It's the best time of the year. I know people are always excited with Labor Day to have like a 3-day weekend and all that stuff, but to me, it's about the true beginning of college football. I love week 0, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's just an appetizer. You don't fill up on the appetizer. You wait for the main course, which we got plenty of dishes to praise our way through to start off the season.
Again, we're recording this on Wednesday, so this will be out Thursday morning. What's the best game tonight? Because there is a full slate. What's on the menu? What are you going to be watching here now that the college football season is here?
I'm going for something that's a little bit, I think it's the obvious choice. I think if it's not your choice, I think it's the incorrect decision. But it's the backyard brawl.
Absolutely.
It's West Virginia and Pitt. 11 years since they played, which is absolutely to think about. But I'm just so excited for this game because there's so much bad blood between these two teams. Pitt has some expectations to, try and recapture the magic that they had last season and win the Coastal again and get to the ACC championship game again. And I'm curious to see how that all shakes out, how that bad blood kind of unfolds there. But also with the kind of step towards the super conferences, the mega conferences that we're getting in college football, I think these regional rivalry games are all the more important. So the second they agreed to extend this rivalry to get a few more games in, I was so excited. I cannot wait to see these two teams play.
75 miles separate Morgantown, West Virginia, and Pittsburgh. But Louis, you're burying the lead with this game. The two former USC quarterbacks, Kedon Slovis, JT Daniels, and Slovis at a pep rally said something we cannot air here on this conversation.
I just saw that.
Yeah. He's gotten involved in this rivalry. So I'm glad it's back, considering it's been more than a decade since these two teams have played. But how weird is it going to be to where if you could go back in time and say to these two quarterbacks at USC, hey, you're going to be playing in a rivalry a few years later for these two schools?
It's so weird to think that these two teams or these two quarterbacks are coming back together again. In a sense, going from USC now up to the mountains of Appalachia, hanging out and doing their thing. I'm super curious to see how JT Daniels looks, because I was very excited to see, him go to Georgia and what that could potentially mean. And then that just never manifested into anything. So I think that both of those guys are very talented. It'll just be about how they're surrounded and what pieces kind of come together for the two of them now that, they're not calling Southern California home anymore.
Yes. And on Thursday night, too, for personal reasons, Louis, my alma mater, the Missouri Tigers, play Louisiana Tech. That's going to be at 8 p.m. ESPNU. I'm going to be watching. But listen, we've got an All-American kicker, Harrison Mevis. He's a Paul Bunyan-style kicker. Can make Sebastian Janikowski jealous. Listen, I don't have high expectations for my Tigers, but I'm going to be watching. Harrison Mevis season is upon us. And again, that's Thursday night. There's a ton of games. We're both with the Backyard Brawl, though, that game at 7 o'clock ESPN Thursday night. So I think that transitions to what's the best overall matchup of the weekend, because there's two heavyweight matchups on Saturday. But if you had to pick one, Louis, which matchup do you have?
Okay, so I think that when I look at those two heavyweight matchups that you're talking about, right, you've got Notre Dame and Ohio State, you've got Oregon and Georgia. I think I already know how those games are going to go. Okay. I think that both Ohio State and Georgia are going to kind of run away with things. So I want to take a step away from those top 10 type matchups to something that's a little bit further down the top 25, Cincinnati and Arkansas. That is what I'm looking at here. And I think it's because, you have two of the best coaches in college football in Sam Pittman and Luke Fickell fighting it out. I'm always excited to see these non-conference games where they're true road tests. And Cincinnati has not been afraid to take these moments and try and run with them and prove that they belong with the big boys. Just look at the Notre Dame game last year as an example there. Plus, the Bearcats are making their way to the Big 12 next year. So they want to kind of continue that transition, build that momentum, and try and end their run with the AAC on a high note and win another conference championship for sure. And they lost, interesting enough, not as many players as you think. I believe it's about 16 returning starters. But the thing is, the players that they did lose were very, very good and very, very important. The Desmond Ritters, the Kobe Bryants, the Sauce Gardners, the Alec Pierces of the world. And then when you look at Arkansas, Sam Pittman, what he's been able to do to turn around this program has been absolutely fascinating. I believe it was last year, even this year, probably you're looking at it, some of the most difficult schedules in all of college football. They're playing in the SEC West. Last year, they beat Texas. I mean, is Texas back? I think that's always the question we ask, but they beat Texas. They beat Texas A&M. They push Ole Miss and Alabama to the brink. Like, this is a very good team. They lost Traylon Burks to the Titans, to the NFL, sure. But KJ Jefferson at quarterback is really talented. He was their leading rusher last year. He doesn't always put up like the biggest numbers, but he's incredibly efficient. That offensive line, I think every starter is about 300 pounds and probably can run like a 4.7, 4.8 type thing. Like, they're big and athletic. And so they'll be one of the best offensive lines in the SEC, not playing for Alabama or Georgia. So I'm super curious to see how all of those teams kind of coalesce and commingle there to start the season. And plus the SP plus, Bill Connolly's, ranking system both has these teams higher up than the AP voters do. They're in the 20s in the AP. But in terms of his ranking system, which looks at like the play-by-play efficiency of teams, he has them in the mid-teens. So, it's early enough in the season where I can look at these matchups and be like, oh man, they could make a little bit of noise later on. It's not late enough in the season where the Alabama, Ohio States, Georgias have risen to the top and there are no questions about who's making the playoffs. So that's what I'm looking at.
Good pick, Louis, because if you talk about pure matchups, Notre Dame first-year head coach Marcus Freeman earlier this week says in a press conference that he didn't know the Irish were 17-point underdogs. Classic coach speak. Classic coach speak. So I fully expect Ohio State to take care of business there. And then Georgia, you'd expect to take care of business against Oregon, but we'll see because of how many Bulldogs got drafted this past season, 15, including 5 first-rounders. So can Georgia, how do they defend their title as national champions, considering, you have a lot of really good players that went to the league? And so that's the one I'm looking at, is Georgia versus Oregon. Now, from a big picture standpoint, again, can they defend the national championship? 2 players I want to watch from the Georgia standpoint. The tight end, Brock Bowers, a sophomore. He had 13 touchdowns as a freshman. And then how about on the D-line, Jalen Carter, who sometimes made Jordan Davis. He looked better than Jordan Davis at times last season, a violent player at the line of scrimmage. So Oregon's got its work cut out for him because first-year head coach Dan Lanning has been the Georgia defensive coordinator for the past few seasons as well. So I like your pick, Louis, because I don't expect either the Oregon-Georgia game to be close or the Notre Dame-Ohio State game to be close. I think Oregon's got a better shot at the upset between the two, so that's the one I'm going to pick. But I like your choice as a pure football purist. I totally understand your logic there with your pick for the top matchup on Saturday.
Well, and don't forget, Oregon went on the road and beat Ohio State last year. So, am I going to take Oregon to beat Ohio State? No. Ohio State, Georgia? No way. I don't think so. But if any team is going to do it this weekend, I think Oregon has a solid shot as compared to many others.
Yes, and Lanning's going to be relying on the recruits brought in by Mario Cristobal, who's now the coach down at the U. So his ability to recruit is why he got the job at Miami. So we'll see what happens. And again, Georgia, all of the talent from that team a year ago, where it's like, Louis, let's be honest here. You and I could have coached that Bulldogs defense last season and still had success. Let's be honest.
I think we would have been solid. 500 at least.
Better than that. I'm not saying we would have won a national championship, but we would have had a winning record, no doubt. Let's go to the ACC, and I know you've got 2 matchups featuring North Carolina teams. Louis, I'm just going to give you the floor. Take this in any direction you'd like.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I really took a long time to look at FSU and LSU. I think that is interesting. But ultimately, kind of sticking with what I said with the backyard brawl, regional rivalries and how important they are. That's what you're getting here with UNC and NC State. And what I appreciate with both of these teams is they could have very easily played ECU and App State respectively, at home. But instead, they're hitting the road for true road games in the first week of the season for NC State, second week, I guess, after they played week 0 for UNC. But it's really important, I think, for college football as a whole. For these games in particular, I think of the 4 teams, if we're going to look at like 4 teams here that are involved, I'm most intrigued to see what State does, because there's obviously been a lot of hype around State this season. Some people have gone as far as to say they're dark horse, playoff contenders. If State is going to truly be a team that is contending for the Atlantic, trying to find a spot in the ACC championship game, see if they can at the very least get a New Year's Six bowl, maybe even contend for the playoffs, this is going to be a good measuring stick, because ECU is a good team. They're a team that is going to contend for a spot in the AAC championship game. So this is not going to be a cakewalk by any means. There's a lot of talented players, especially on offense for the Pirates. However, I do think State will take care of business there, which leaves me UNC and App State, which I think is going to be toxic in the best way possible. I think these two fan bases are not going to enjoy each other's company. I think the atmosphere is going to be absolutely electric in Boone. I think that it's going to be a very fun game. It's going to be significantly closer. I really want both Downs and Grimes to be healthy for UNC. At last check, their day-to-day question marks. That would be huge for Carolina. It would be really fun to see what ends up happening with that. But I was so impressed with Drake May and what he did against FAMU. Really impressive stuff, making quick decisions, throwing accurate balls. His back shoulder touchdown to Josh Downs was just beautiful. But I think too, the thing to watch will be App State's weakness right now, which is the wide receiver room. That's where they're the least experienced. They had a lot of people leave, versus the UNC secondary, which struggled against FAMU. That passing attack was, I think, a lot better than people expected. But still, there were a lot of struggles there for UNC's passing defense. So that is going to be what I'm looking at there. I think UNC wins, but I do think this is going to be a very exciting game.
You have to be encouraged by the start of the Drake May era. And Louis, I know that's your alma mater, and all legends start somewhere. It reminds me a little bit. I'm not saying Drake May is going to go win the Heisman, but it reminded me a little bit of when Lamar Jackson came onto the scene during his Heisman season. He had something like 7 or 8 touchdowns in the first half against a Charlotte team. 5 touchdowns in a game. I don't care who you're going against. Very encouraging. And the backup, is it Jacoby Criswell, didn't really play a whole lot in the opener either, meaning that Drake May had command of the offense, which has to be encouraging if you're a Tar Heel fan. Definitely need to shore things up here in week 2. But I know everyone's buzzing about Devin Leary, the preseason ACC player of the year. And all I'm saying is that the Tar Heels might have a very good quarterback in their own right in Drake May.
Well, look at the kind of steady line of quarterbacks that UNC has had over the past few years, right? You had Marquise Williams, Mitch Trubisky. We can talk about his NFL experience and all that stuff, but like
collegiately,
in college was great.
Yeah,
he was great. And then you look at Sam Howell, kind of coming out of a bit out of nowhere and having such a great career. I mean, probably statistically speaking, the best UNC quarterback ever. And then Drake May, if he is your follow up to that, and if he's able to continue to grow and show this kind of skill, 6'4", 220, like to have the kind of touch on the ball that he had, to have the arm strength, his running game, I think he had like a 42-yard run against FAMU. So, I appreciated what the offensive line did for UNC as well against FAMU. I was concerned because you saw Sam Howell running all over the place so much last year, and he played pretty well. The offensive line was able to give him a lot of room to work this game against FAMU. So we'll see if that continues to hold up, see if other guys not named Josh Downs can step up at receiver. But I think that offense is very exciting for UNC. The question is just going to be, is that defense going to get better? Because that could end up being the trouble spot for this team.
And the player that always helps the quarterback is the running back. And remember, the Tar Heels without British Brooks, who had the devastating preseason injury, out for the year. So it's just like, man, Tar Heels have their work cut out for them, but Downs, a preseason All-American receiver in his own right too, and someone who definitely has an NFL future as well. So feed him the rock, and then if you're going to use him as a decoy, if he gets the double team, someone else is going to have a one-on-one matchup that you have to win. So that's where I'm looking at it from North Carolina's standpoint, Louis. I want to begin to wrap up here. A few other questions for you. Is there a transfer that you're most excited to watch? Can be anywhere in the country, because the transfer portal is a big, big part of college football and the national landscape at this standpoint.
So we talked a lot about Pitt, and this is not, we're not in Pittsburgh, but I do think former Pitt wide receiver Jordan Addison is going to be fascinating. Because, Kenny Pickett was great with him last year. They had an awesome chemistry, but now he's going to a Lincoln Riley offense with USC. He's going to have Caleb Williams throwing him the ball, who we saw what Caleb Williams was able to do last year, and he's only going to continue to grow. Jordan Addison won the Biletnikoff Award last year, going to the nation's top receiver. He was an All-American. He had 100 catches, 1,593 yards receiving, 17 touchdowns. 17 touchdowns. One more time, 17 touchdowns. And I think there's a legitimate chance that he could do better than that this year. And if not him, I would also kind of lean towards Jameer Gibbs, who is the running back for Alabama. He transferred from Georgia Tech, where he had, I think it's about over 1,100 yards total receiving and rushing last year. So that could be the kind of thing where you drag and drop him into the Alabama offense, and he's able to just absolutely go off. What about you?
See what Jordan Addison. Well, you're in my brain because I picked Caleb Williams out of USC, and it's really the repercussions. It's not really even about Williams, but he follows Lincoln Riley to USC. When he played as a true freshman in Norman, Oklahoma, he upplants and supplants Spencer Rattler, who's now the quarterback at South Carolina. So it's like, if Williams can play well as a sophomore and then as a junior next year, USC could raise its profile, potentially raise the profile of the Pac-12, get back in the national conversation, right before they leave for the Big Ten. So it's not really about Caleb Williams, but it is about Caleb Williams, if that makes sense at all. And you mentioned his teammate, Jordan Addison. Like, what a great problem to have in your college career. You've got Kenny Pickett, a first-round draft pick, throwing you the ball. You have a highly touted Caleb Williams, who's getting some buzz preseason as a potential Heisman favorite, throwing you the ball. And Lincoln Riley's offense, like, best case scenario, how I see this playing out for USC is what Lincoln Riley did with CeeDee Lamb when he was the coach of the Oklahoma Sooners, who wound up being a first-round draft pick by the Dallas Cowboys. So it's going to be just awesome to watch. And really, can USC get back on the map to get LA back into the national conversation again, right before they leave for the Big Ten here in 2024, which isn't really that far away.
Still weird to say. Still really
absolutely.
Weird to say.
Absolutely. All right, Louis, we're going to wrap on this. College Game Day entering its 36th season. They're going to be in Columbus, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Who's the old ball coach, Lee Corso, going to pick when he dons the headgear on Saturday?
So if you never know where Corso is going to go with it, right? I think if this game was in South Bend, I think there's a chance he picks Notre Dame. However, it is not in South Bend. It is at the Horseshoe. I think he's picking Ohio State. I think he's going to take that Brutus helmet, put it on, and is going to go crazy, and he's going to do his little wave and everything. Everyone's going to love it. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm
with you, because 87 years old, when the show first started, he didn't do the headgear picks, but this is going to be an homage to Corso's very first headgear pick when he put on Brutus the Buckeye head. It's going to happen again on Saturday. I'm telling you, Buckeyes 17-point favorites at home. I expect them to win and cover, by the way, in that game. We'll see what happens.
I mean, CJ Stroud's the Heisman favorite, right? So, I mean, like, I see it happening. I think it's not going to be a problem. I think Notre Dame's going to be good this year, but I don't think they're going to be, beating Ohio State in week 1 good.
We will see what happens. Louis, anything you want to plug or anything else you want to discuss before we sign off here?
Watch WRAL Sports Plus. It is the best. We have all kinds of content, whether it comes down to high school football. We have some college football related stuff. Joe Gilio's Pack Therapy podcast is coming to the show on Friday. And then, we do all kinds of content, whether you want like the Durham Bulls, North Carolina FC, NC State hockey, UNC hockey, NC Courage, plus simulcasts of all the big radio shows that CBC does. We've got a sports shop with K-Mac and Reese. We've got Adam Gold show, the OG with Joe Ovius and Joe Giglio, all kinds of great content. Be sure to watch WRAL Sports Plus.
I love it. For Louis Fernandez, I'm Mark Bergin. Thanks for watching and enjoy the Thursday and Saturday action. College football's back, baby.